let's leave the dreary shit behind and talk about my one true love, books. Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and I love to talk about books. So today I'm going to talk about the books that I read in April and what I'm planning to read in May, my birthday month. I'm acting a lot more excited about the prospect of turning 36 than I actually am. So April was a really exciting month for books. I read, I think, 8 books, and of course there was Dewey's 24-hour readathon, which I took part in. I did a wee vlog of that, so I'll post a link for you. And I also joined in my first ever cozy reading night, which is hosted by Lauren in the Books, and I will link her too. And on Friday she hosted a cozy reading morning and I joined in with that as well. So lots and lots of bookish fun. You might notice if you're subscribed to my channel that this video is a little bit later than it usually is. Yeah, I've just had one hell of a week. I have a big uni assignment due on Tuesday, which I'm really behind with, and the big reason for that is that I've had another mental health crash this week. I talked about, was it last week, the week before, I'd had a bit of a crash and I vlogged about that, and this week it was worse. I've now, I've had to call in sick to work. And I'm really struggling to concentrate on my uni work. I've asked for an extension, but I haven't heard anything back yet, so really I shouldn't be sitting here talking about books. I should be cracking on with that, but there's only so many randomised control trials a girl can read on a Saturday morning without wanting to throw herself out of the window. So I'm taking a break to talk about something a bit nicer. So yeah, let's leave the dreary shit behind and talk about my one true love, books. So I started April off with Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Oh my god, this book is perfection, honestly. Yeah, and I can struggle to review a book that I've really loved because I kind of don't want to spill into like hyperbole and cheesiness, but I seem to be like the last person in the world to get around to reading this. It's a classic, and it's about an unnamed narrator who's quite a naive young girl working as a paid companion to an older American lady. They go to Monte Carlo and she meets the mysterious Maxim de Winter. Within a matter of weeks, he asks her to marry him and she goes back with him to England to his infamous house Mandalay. And she struggles to assimilate herself as the new Mrs. de Winter. The Rebecca of the title is his first wife who has died under tragic circumstances, and as the book plays out we discover that not everything is as it seems. This book grabbed me from the first few pages and didn't let me go. I loved it. I can't even say what aspect of it I loved the most. Is it the gothic setting of Mandalay? Is it the mystery behind Rebecca's death? Is it the ghost of Rebecca, which seems to cast a shadow over everything our young narrator tries to do? Is it the creepy, shifty staff of Mandalay? Or is it just all of these things? I absolutely bloody loved it. Definitely one of my favourites of all time. Next up was She by H.C. Warner, in which Ben, who's recently split up from his long-term girlfriend, meets the gorgeous, glamorous Bella. They have a whirlwind romance, and a marriage and a baby are quickly on the way. But Bella isn't what she seems and sets her sights on tearing Ben and his family apart. So the author Helen Warner, I'd heard her talking about this book on, I think it was the Badass Women podcast. She was the head of daytime TV programming for ITV, so she's responsible for some monstrosities like Loose Women. So I didn't have high hopes for this book, but she came across really well on the podcast, and I was quite intrigued by the storyline. So I gave it a go. It's not my normal sort of book. And I'll get the negatives out of the way first. It's not particularly well written. The twists are quite obvious, and they are also quite ridiculous. But I stuck with it. I'm not very experienced with thrillers, so maybe that's why I didn't DNF it. And I kind of think that the things that made it not great were kind of what kept me reading, because it was just so extreme. It had some pretty decent sex scenes in it. And also I did think it was quite interesting that it explores something that isn't very well covered in literature or media or anything like that, and it's the female on male domestic violence issue. So I did think that was quite interesting too. But you know, in general, it's just fluff. It's going to entertain you. It's not going to change your life. After that, I went back to my TBR and read Her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey Niffenegger. Niffenegger is the author of The Time Traveller's Wife, which I think actually, yes, is on the bookshelf behind me. I really enjoyed that book. I read it like years ago now, so I'm always a bit unsure about saying whether I loved a book if I haven't read it for a long time, because my taste might have changed, my opinions might have changed, but I've always fondly remembered that one, so I was looking forward to this. The premise sounds great. Twins Valentina and Julia are bequeathed, is that the word? The flat in London of an auntie that they never knew existed, who turns out to be their mother's twin. But the caveat is that if they want the flat, they're never allowed to let their mother enter it. So they head off to London, where family mysteries begin to unravel. I think the strength for this book for me was the setting. The flat itself is full of antique furniture and books, and then it looks onto Highgate Cemetery, which is a Victorian cemetery. It sounds absolutely beautiful. Next time I'm in London, I'm definitely going to have a wee snoop around. And the book itself is quite gothic, which I love. The twins are super creepy. There's ghosts, and I really do enjoy Audrey Niffenegger's writing. I think she can really bring, well, in the case of this book, she can bring the dead to life. And the cast of characters are really interesting. Everyone's navigating through their own problems. And actually, at times, I did find, particularly the upstairs neighbour, I found his story really compelling. I think in the wrong hands, this story would have gone from like the sublime to the ridiculous. And it does walk a really narrow tightrope between those two, but I do think it manages that walk with barely a wobble. So I really enjoyed it. Time Traveller's Wife, I think, is the stronger of the two books of hers that I've read, but this is definitely a close second. So, and then I tossed in another NetGalley. This time it was Saint X by Alexis Schaitkin. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'd heard about this one discussed on a couple of podcasts, so I was really excited to get a copy of this. It's a story of Claire, who as a child goes on holiday to an unnamed Caribbean island with her family, and her sister is found dead on the final days of the holiday. Years later, she jumps into a cab in New York, and the driver is one of the two men who had originally been accused of her sister's murder. And from there, this kind of obsession with wanting to discover the truth spirals a bit out of control for Claire. And straight up, I just thought this book was brilliant. It gripped me from the start. It's layered, it's intelligent, it's really well written. And this is more than your typical mystery novel. It's much more an examination of family dynamics, how people cope with loss, how life experience shape us, and how the passage of time can change how we view things, to the point where actually like the whole whodunit aspect becomes secondary to everything else. I loved the story of Claire and Alison's suspected killer. I think Schaitkin is really good at developing a backstory. It's a slower pace than you would expect from a mystery, but I think that's what makes it so good. As you unfurl each layer, you get more and more involved, and I love a book with depth. So yeah, this is a real standout for me, one of the best books that I've read this year. And then I went back to my TBR, and this time it was for Diary of a Bookseller by Shaun Bythell. I'm really struggling with all of his names today. And I loved this book. This is so funny and just fascinating to read about a slice of life of a bookseller in Wigton, which is a rural Scottish town, and is classed as Scotland's book town. It has a festival every year, which I still not managed to get to, but one day I will do it. And Shaun runs the largest, I think, bookshop in the town. And I love Scotland. I love bookshops. I love books about books. I love a heavy dose of snarky sarcasm, especially when it's to do with customers. Yeah, this book has all of that in spades. I used to work in Waterstones, and this is kind of, I think it was just after I'd eaten most of the retail markets on the high street, but before Amazon had really caused as much damage as it now has done. So it was really interesting to read. This is set later than when I worked in Waterstones, and it's interesting to see how an independent bookshop was dealing with the challenges that particularly Amazon has presented. But at the same time, I cringed and laughed out loud along with the stories that Shaun tells in this book about his staff, about customers, about himself. You know, he's not actually that old, but he comes across like a curmudgeonly, kind of miserable old git, but actually underneath it all, he seems like he's a really generous, sociable, funny guy who really does care about his book business. And I think it was during Cozy Reading Night I was reading this, and someone directed me to an incredible YouTube video that Shaun and his staff from the bookshop did, and I will link that because it's just the best thing. It's so funny. It's Shaun and his staff doing a parody of the Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight, but it's Reader's Delight, and it's just an absolute joy to behold, so I'll link that. And if that video doesn't make you want to visit his shop, I don't know what will. And then I had another NetGalley to read. I was busy on NetGalley this month, and I read Summerwater by Sarah Moss, which I adored. It's set in one day, and it's a collection of seemingly unrelated snippets of the lives of different people who are staying in a holiday park in Scotland on an unnamed lochside. It's a miserable rainy day. There are families of young children, there are families of teenagers, there's an elderly couple, and interspersed with the snippets of their day are some really beautiful little vignettes about the nature around them as well. It's really unclear where the book is going until it gets there. And I won't say anything more than that because it would be a complete tragedy to spoil this book, but I will say that at the end I was a little bit shell-shocked. I hadn't expected where it was going. I've never read Sarah Moss before, but I definitely want to read more of her after reading this because I think her writing style is really great, and she's really good at capturing nuance and kind of almost a social commentary as she's doing it. It's not a long book, it's a lovely quick read, and I definitely recommend it. And at the same time that I was reading Summerwater, I was also reading The Silver Linings Playbook by Matthew Quick off my TBR. I finished both of these during Dewey's 24-hour readathon, though I'd started them previously. So I wasn't sure what to expect with this one. I said in my TBR video that for years I'd written this off. I thought it was a bit of a rom-com book, and it was only when someone had mentioned when they were discussing it that it had a big mental health slant that I became a bit more interested in it. So Pat Peoples, who probably has the worst name in books that I've read in a while, he is brought home by his mother from a mental institution that he's been in for an undefined length of time. He has some very specific issues, including, hilariously, getting very angry when he hears Kenny G. He's obsessed with exercise, and he's seen by a therapist to continue his mental health care. We know that something terrible happened to lead to his incarceration, but we don't know what. But we do know that he is separated from his wife. We don't know how long for, we don't know why, but we do know that he's expecting to reconcile with her. Things I didn't love about this book, obviously it's called a playbook, which I didn't know until a couple of years ago is some sort of sports term. And it's very, very American football heavy. I'm not in the least bit bloody interested in sport, especially not reading about them. And they go to a lot of football matches, they sing a lot of football songs. Even his therapist is a football fan. It does get a bit grating, but at the same time, it does kind of help the book keep pace and work along through the storyline. He meets a similarly mentally unwell sister of one of his friends who her partner has died, and she's struggling to come to terms with that, and they strike up this very bizarre relationship where they go for runs together. Well, she follows him when he's running, but they don't talk, and then they go to a diner and they don't really talk and they eat a bowl of cereal. Yeah, it's a very quirky book. It does take a really interesting turn. I thought it was quite funny, but it's also quite an interesting exploration of mental health issues, and it does have a really sweet ending. It's not an in-depth look at mental health in any shape or form, but you know, it's actually quite, considering the issues that it covers, it's quite a fun book. And I'm interested, seeing as I'm stuck with the hideous movie tie-in cover, I'm interested to watch the film now. Maybe I'll do a video about that, because I should have mentioned, after reading Rebecca, where are you? After reading Rebecca, I watched the Alfred Hitchcock adaptation of it, so I've got some things to say about that as well, so maybe I will do a bit of a book to movie video as well. And during Jews I started another book off my TBR, which was Poppy Zedbright's Courtney Love, The Real Story. I wouldn't class myself as a fan of Courtney Love. I was too young to get into grunge, and I've listened to Hole and Nirvana in past years, and like, they're just okay. Like, I'm not a huge fan of their music, but I do find their story, and particularly Courtney Love, quite interesting. So when my friend was checking out a whole bunch of his books, he let me get first dibs on them, and this is one of the ones I pulled out. I read Poppy Zedbright once before. I read I think it was called Drawing Blood, and I enjoyed that because I don't really read horror, but I did really enjoy that. So I knew this story was in safe hands. And yeah, I found this really interesting book. It's not designed to tear Courtney Love down, but it's equally not designed to make her into some sort of saint. This book was published in '97, but it does cover her childhood, which was just horrific. Her childhood, her involvement in various different music scenes across America and in the UK as well, and then it obviously covers her meeting Kurt Cobain, their marriage, their becoming parents, and ultimately his death by suicide. And like many kind of biographies, autobiographies or memoirs of famous people, it's just interesting on its own merit, the people she knew, the people she hung out with, the people she hated. And probably that's something that you get from this book that you don't get a lot from celebrity kind of books, is that she speaks her mind, she says what she thinks, and if she doesn't like someone, she's not only going to tell them, she's going to tell the whole fucking world. And I think I've come out of reading this book with different attitude to Courtney Love. Not that I particularly had one before, but you know, I think she's cool as hell. She's slightly problematic, but she's just her own person, and she has been through some really horrible stuff. And yeah, I think she's just fascinating. And the book itself, it's really well written. It doesn't just take Courtney's words for things. It flows really well, and I just thought it was really fascinating. Also on my TBR for April was Eat Up by Ruby Tando, which I was a bit delayed in getting, it's a digital download from the library and someone else already had it out, but I've got it now. I've started reading it. Annoyingly, the format of the page numbers in this book on Overdrive only gives you the page numbers of the current chapter, so I have no idea how far through the book I am. I think I'm about a third of the way through, so I won't be finishing that obviously in April because we're now in May. So I finished most of the books on my April TBR except for Eat Up. but at least I've started that, and I threw in a few NetGalleys as well. So yeah, really good reading month, and let's see what May has in store for me. So in May, as well as finishing Eat Up, I also have another 2 books on the go, which I really hate. I'm not the sort of person that has a lot of books going on at the same time, but because of Dewey's, I wanted to have like a variety of books to choose from to keep me going throughout the challenge. So I've now ended up with 3 currently on the go. So I've got Eat Up. Then I also, during the challenge, started The Grace Keepers by Kirsty Logan, and Scabby Queen by Kirsten Innes. I won't get into those 2 just now. If you want to know what they're about, they're in my readathon TBR video, which I will link. And then I've got The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I don't know much about this book other than people really seem to love it. It's about a circus which is only open at night, and 2 magicians, I think, who have been trained together since childhood but are now being pitted against each other, but they end up falling in love, and that's about all I know. But it does sound like it's going to be magical and mysterious, and I hope I like it as much as other people have. I am a bit worried it sounds slightly similar to The Grace Keepers, so I don't know if reading them back to back is going to affect my enjoyment, but we'll see. And next up I will have Daughters of the Lake by Wendy Webb. This sounds quite intriguing. It's about a woman who, after the end of her marriage, goes to stay with, I think it's her parents, to try and get herself back together when a body of a woman holding an infant is washed up on the shores of the lake nearby. And no one knows who the woman is apart from Kate, our protagonist, who has seen the woman in her dreams. And I know there's bits of folklore, and there's flashbacks to 100 years previously. It sounds like it could be quite intriguing. It's been on my Kindle for quite a while. I think it was an Amazon Read First or First Reads selection, so yeah, I'm quite interested to get to that one. And I realised that my May selection is quite Kindle heavy, which is funny because I don't tend to read my Kindle a lot, but I must have been making a concerted effort to clear some of the unread books off my Kindle. But for my final TBR read, I am back to real books, or I thought I would be, but I'm just back from rummaging in my bookcase, and I can't find it. But I'm meant to be reading Zoe Heller's Everything You Know, and I'm having a thought. I think I might have Unhold It and just not marked off my TBR. I'll be really annoyed actually if I have, because it's for a really tricky Pop Sugar, no, I think it's an Around the Year challenge prompt that I literally have nothing else to fill that prompt with. So I'm really annoyed if I finally unhold it, because it has been on my bookcase for like literally decades. I think it came free in one of my mum's magazines, and it's just been sat on my shelf and I've had no inclination to read it. And then this challenge prompt came along and I was like, oh, finally. Yeah, but I can't find it. So who knows if I'll be reading that this month or not. If not, I'll have to go back to my Kindle for the first of my June TBR, but let's not worry about that just now. Let's not wish time away, unless it means the end of lockdown, because then I can get my hair done and get these nails off and feel a bit more like a human being. In fact, on that topic, I just hope that anyone who is watching from the UK or any other country that is experiencing lockdown, I hope you're keeping safe and well, and anyone you know are related to, maybe passed in the street once upon a time, I hope they're all well as well. I don't know about you guys, but reading is really getting me through this strange time, and I'm really thankful that I started my booktube just as all of this was kicking off, because this experience has also been really helpful, not only because I get to talk about books, but also because of the other people I've come across, and just finding more opportunities and reasons to read as well. So on that note, if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a wee like, leave a comment so I know that you've put in the effort to watch. I'd love to be able to say hi, and if you like what I'm giving you, I put a new booktube video up every Saturday usually, so please subscribe. I'd love to have you in my gang. My Twitter and Instagram handles are down in the comments below as well if you'd like to follow me on social media, because I would love to follow you back. And until next time, enjoy your books and bye. The Shaun Bythell by Audrey Niffenegger by Audrey.